I'm Harper Lewis, 34 years old, living in Seattle, Washington. During the day, I'm the chief financial officer of a high-end interior design firm where precision, discretion, and trust are currency. At night, I'm Mason's wife, the man I met in college, the one I believed was my forever. We spent 11 years together, 6 of them married, building a life I thought was unbreakable. I used to believe that if something were ever to destroy us, it would arrive loudly, with shouting and slammed doors. I was wrong. Sometimes the end begins quietly, with a few glowing words on a locked screen. That morning started like every other. I woke before Mason, padded into the bathroom, and brushed my teeth while half asleep. His phone was on the sink, face up. It lit up once, briefly. A message preview appeared from a name I didn't recognize. Can't wait for the weekend. The cabin, wine, and that pink lace set, counting the hours. My body went completely still, not because it sounded scandalous, but because it felt undeniable. I stood there with toothpaste dissolving on my tongue, the cold tile grounding my feet, listening to the steady rush of water as Mason showered behind the frosted glass like nothing in the world had changed. I didn't touch the phone. I didn't need to. What settled into my chest wasn't shock, it was clarity, the quiet confirmation of every unease I'd brushed aside for months. Lately, Mason's excuses had come easily. Last-minute trips, weekends away that once would have been ours. His phone followed him everywhere now, even into the shower. His laptop password changed. The warmth in his eyes dulled into something distant, something that slid past me rather than resting on me. I had told myself not to overthink it, that long marriages evolve, that fatigue looks like indifference. Standing there, I understood how wrong I'd been. I rinsed my mouth, washed my face, applied my makeup with steady hands. I felt hollow, as if I were observing my life from a few feet away. When I stepped into the bedroom, Mason was tying his tie, reflected in the mirror. He smiled at me like always. "This weekend, I've got a client seminar in Cortland," he said casually. "I'll be back Sunday night." I nodded, my voice even when I reminded him to pack something warm. I didn't ask who was waiting at the cabin. I didn't disrupt the performance. Something else was already forming, quietly, inside me. Thursday night followed its usual rhythm. Tennis, 2 whiskeys, deep sleep. I knew Mason's habits as well as I knew his fingerprint unlocked his phone. Right index finger. After he passed out, the scent of cologne and alcohol lingering, I gently lifted his hand and pressed it to the sensor. The screen unlocked with a soft click. What I found wasn't a fling, it was a parallel life. Her name was Claire Donovan, 38, medical device sales, married, confident, calculated. Messages stretched back months, photos, plans, jokes layered with intimacy. One message mentioned a husband. "Tyler will be in San Jose all week, the cabin's ours." I searched his name. Tyler Donovan. Architect, sustainable residential design, Bellevue. His face looked kind, worn, familiar in a way that made my stomach ache. I didn't sleep that night. I read until dawn. The next morning, I typed and erased a message more times than I could count. When I finally sent it, my hands were shaking. "Hi, Tyler. This is Harper Lewis. I believe your wife Claire and my husband Mason are having an affair. If you're willing to talk, I can share proof." 3 hours later, he called. His voice was controlled but unsteady beneath the surface. I told him everything. Then I asked the question that had been waiting for him too. Would you want to meet them at the cabin before they even settle in? Silence, then a breath. Yes, let's meet first. Saturday morning, we met halfway at a quiet cafe. Tyler recognized the cabin floor in the photos instantly. By the end of the hour, we weren't strangers. We were allies stitched together by betrayal. He still had a key. Mason thought I was in Spokane. By Sunday morning, we were inside the cabin, arranging truth like a stage set. Wine, glasses, chairs positioned deliberately. No shouting, No chaos, just inevitability. We talked while we waited about miscarriages, missed chances, the slow erosion we both mistook for normal. When I asked if this was too much, Tyler shook his head. This isn't revenge, it's reality. At 5:57 p.m., the gravel crunched outside. Mason stepped in first, confident, careless. Claire followed, laughing, tulips in hand. Their expressions collapsed the moment they saw us. The champagne bottle slipped from Mason's grasp and shattered across the floor, sharp and loud in the sudden silence. Petals scattered. Illusions broke. "Welcome to your weekend getaway," I said lightly. "We've prepared wine, chairs, and the truth." Mason tried to speak. Claire reached for Tyler with her eyes. I tilted my head, calm. What about the messages, the receipts, the rides to her neighborhood? Tyler stepped forward then, his voice steady, asking Claire about the goodnight texts and the lies she wrapped in work trips. Claire broke down, covering her face. "Tyler, please don't." "No," he said steely. "What don't? Don't stand here and face you? Don't hear the truth? Don't watch my wife cheating in the very house I designed with my own hands?" I stood and took the envelope from the chair beside me. "I didn't come here empty-handed," I said, my voice steady. "I spent the last 48 hours gathering everything. Call history, messages, photos from the company wedding Claire and Mason both attended. The one Mason told me was just with the guys." Claire turned pale. Mason grabbed the envelope, flipped through a few pages, then threw it down after only seconds, his eyes bloodshot. "You were spying on me?" I looked him directly. "I was verifying the truth because I'd been suspicious for too long, and because you were so careful. I had to be." Claire collapsed into a chair, hair disheveled, tears running down her cheeks. Tyler didn't move toward her. He turned away, staring out the window like he needed air. "Claire, how long?" he asked, still not looking at her. 7 months, she whispered. I felt a tight knot in my chest. Mason clenched his hands, stepping toward me as if to explain. "Harper, I was wrong, but that doesn't mean I stopped loving you." I stepped back. "If the love you're talking about is the kind that brings another woman to the same place where I lost our child, then you can keep it." The room fell to silence. I looked at Mason one last time. "You can choose to leave now or sit and hear this through, but if you think there's any chance for forgiveness, then you've completely misunderstood who I am." Tyler looked at Claire, then turned to me. "I need some air." I nodded. "So do I." We stepped out onto the porch, leaving behind two people breaking apart in the ruins of their lies. Outside, Lake Chelan was still calm, like it had been that morning, but for me, the wind had started to rise. We returned to the living room in silence. Claire and Mason were still seated, neither looking at the other. The air was thick, heavy with things left unsaid. I pulled a chair across from Mason. Tyler sat beside me, staring straight at Claire. No one spoke. Not until I placed the second folder on the table did the atmosphere begin to shift. "Mason," I said, eyes fixed on him, "have you ever told Claire why we've kept separate finances for the past 6 years?" He stiffened. "Harper, that's—" "I'll tell her," I cut him off. "Claire, maybe you didn't know, but Mason once racked up over $42,000 in gambling debt back in 2015. His parents quietly paid it off to avoid damaging his career. After that, I had to keep separate accounts, not because of distrust, but because I saw firsthand how much he could hide." Clara turned to Mason, stunned. "You never told me that." "Because it has nothing to do with what's happening today," Mason snapped. "Doesn't it?" I tilted my head, eyes locked on him. "You cheated on me and tried to justify it by saying I was too busy, too cold. But you forgot to tell your mistress that I've been the one carrying the financial load, paying this cabin's mortgage every month, while you were lying and playing cards with your old friends in Tacoma." Mason lowered his head, saying nothing. Tyler now turned to Claire. "And you told me the bank delayed the roof repair loan, but the truth is you transferred nearly $10,000 to a rehab center in Spokane." The recipient, Jackson Donovan, that's your brother, right? Claire looked overwhelmed, her face pale. I didn't want you to worry. No, Tyler said, voice steady but cold. You didn't want to share the truth. You've been living two lives, one with me, one with Mason, and the worst part is, both were built on secrets. The room fell silent. I nodded slightly, then said, This is the only thing you two have in common. You've never been honest with either of us, and even with each other. It's just polished versions of yourselves. Claire burst into tears. I never meant for it to go this far. But you let it, I replied. I don't know what hurts more, being betrayed or realizing the person who betrayed you doesn't even have the courage to admit they were wrong. Mason looked at me, eyes red. I'm sorry, Harper, truly sorry. I looked back at him and said calmly, Sorry doesn't change the truth, and love, if it ever existed, can't save a marriage that's rotted from the roots. Tyler stood up, no longer angry, just exhausted. Claire, he said, do you know what hurts the most? It's that you never once considered telling me the truth, that you thought I wasn't worthy of being trusted with what you were carrying. Claire said nothing, her face drenched in tears. I stood as well. I didn't come here to get love back. I came here to reclaim the truth. And the truth is, Mason, you don't love me. You love the validation of being admired. Claire, you don't love Tyler. You love the feeling of escaping a life you didn't have the courage to face. I looked at both of them one last time, then said slowly, Love isn't enough. Trust, respect, and honesty are the foundation of any real relationship. Without those, love is just a beautiful illusion. Just as I finished, Claire suddenly stood, her hand gripping the edge of the chair. Her eyes were red, not just with shame, but something else, a mix of fear and confusion. There's something I haven't said, she said, voice shaking. Tyler turned to her, brow furrowed again. Claire swallowed hard, her eyes briefly flicking to Mason, then landing on me. I am pregnant. The living room went completely still. The ticking of the wooden wall clock echoed loudly, each second slicing through the air. Mason jumped up. What? What did you say? Claire nodded, lips trembling. I know it's not the right time, but I found out just last week. I was going to tell Mason this weekend at the cabin, but Tyler stood frozen, his voice barely above a whisper. Is the baby mine? Claire turned to him, eyes glistening. Yes, I'm sure. Mason and I always used protection. I went numb. For a few seconds my mind went blank, then quickly flooded with a storm of emotion. No one had prepared for this. No one expected that a confrontation would be overturned by the arrival of an unborn life. Mason stared at Claire, wide-eyed. You're saying you're pregnant with his child? Don't call him his, Claire snapped, showing the first hint of composure since she entered. I was wrong to cheat, but at least I never lied to you about how I felt. Tyler turned away, fists clenched. I looked at Mason. He couldn't speak. His furious expression shifted to something unrecognizable. Shock, humiliation, or just complete emptiness. I took a deep breath and stood. Looks like we've all had enough for today, I said, my eyes still locked on Mason. And since everything is out in the open, I won't drag this out. I opened my bag and pulled out a small folder, placing it on the table next to him. This is the divorce petition and all the financial documentation I've prepared. I've transferred our joint assets into a separate account, legally. Everything's been verified by my attorney. I have nothing to hide. Mason still didn't respond. You can review it or refuse to sign it right now, but I'm not changing my decision. Claire sat back down, instinctively holding her stomach. Tyler turned to her, voice low but controlled. I'll need time to process all of this, but if you're keeping the baby, I'll take responsibility. The child isn't at fault. Claire nodded, choking back tears. I know, and thank you for still being able to say that. I looked at both of them, then turned to Mason. I don't know if you still have something to say, but if you do, now's behind. He raised his head, eyes red and weary. Harper, all of this, it's not worth ending everything over. We had so many good things. You're right,
I nodded. "We had so many good things, but the fact that you chose to trade it all away for some vague emotional thrill with someone who's not even honest with her own husband means I have to protect the rest of my life." Tyler stood up, polite but firm. "I'll head to the car. Harper, if you need anything after this, call me. I think we still have a few conversations left to finish." I nodded, grateful for his calm presence. Claire stepped towards me, hesitant. "I know I have no right to apologize, but I truly never thought it would go this far." I looked directly at her, my eyes no longer angry, just clear. The most dangerous people aren't the obviously bad ones. They're the ones who keep telling themselves they're good, even while they're lying. She froze for a moment, then turned away. I picked up the folder, pulled a pen from my coat pocket, and signed the bottom left corner of each page. When I put the pen down, I felt lighter than I had in years. Lighter because I no longer had to hold together a marriage that had already rotted. Lighter because I no longer had to pretend to trust someone who didn't deserve it. I looked up at Mason, the man who had once been my entire youth, the dream of a family I used to believe in. "Good luck," I said. "You're going to need more than that." Tyler and I left the cabin around 9 p.m. Inside, Mason sat motionless in his chair, and Claire curled in the corner of the room, holding her stomach like the only thing left to cling to was the life she had just admitted was growing inside her. No one saw us out. No one needed to. We walked in silence. The crunch of dried leaves underfoot reminded us that a chapter had officially closed. Tyler opened the car door for me, then got into the driver's seat. Before starting the engine, he glanced over and asked softly, "Do you want to eat something? I know a little place in downtown Chelan that stays open late. Nothing fancy, but their chicken soup's pretty decent." I laughed, a hoarse, unexpected laugh, but a real one. "Yeah, let's eat. I'm starving." We sat side by side in a small diner, the warm yellow light casting a gentle glow over the old wooden table. Neither of us tried to analyze what had just happened. Instead, we talked about quieter things, like how Tyler once considered quitting architecture to go to pastry school, or how I had dreamed of opening a bookstore cafe in Santa Barbara, but let it go after Mason called the idea unrealistic. After dinner, we said goodbye with a light handshake and a silent nod. We didn't become lovers, but that night I knew I had gained something even more grounding. A friend, someone who had walked with me through the darkest night.
6 months later, I stood on the balcony of my small beach house in Port Townsend, holding a cup of hot tea, watching the waves crash against the shore. The divorce had been finalized in less than 2 months thanks to my meticulous preparation, documents, evidence, and clearly defined assets. Mason didn't fight it, maybe because he knew the longer it dragged out, the more he stood to lose. I received the majority of the assets, including a one-time buyout for the old cabin, which I later sold back to Mason. I didn't need to keep a place filled with ghosts. Mason lost his promotion opportunity at the financial firm. His boss, BC, a strict but fair woman, found out about what happened through an internal company event. No one said anything officially, but gradually he was removed from big projects. He became the guy overseeing Team B temporarily. Claire gave birth last week. Tyler texted me. "Baby's here, healthy, a girl. Emotions are all over the place, but we're trying." Attached was a photo, a tiny hand wrapped around Claire's finger, and Tyler looking into the camera with a softness I'd never seen before. I don't know if they got back together as a couple, but clearly they're learning how to be honest with themselves and each other, even if late. As for me, I live alone in a new house by the sea. It's not far from Seattle, but peaceful enough that I can hear the wind every morning. I changed jobs, no longer a CFO, but a freelance financial advisor working on my own schedule. No more packed meetings, no more midnight email chains. I've also learned how to unplug, how to rest, how to breathe. Tyler and I still keep in touch, not often, but consistently. Sometimes it's a quick Happy Thanksgiving. Sometimes it's just saw a little French-style cabin in Oregon, made me think of you, beautiful. And sometimes it's a 15-minute call just to ask, "Are you doing okay?" I don't need anything more. We walked through one of the longest nights of our lives together, and even though neither of us says it, I know we're friends. A kind of friendship that needs no labels, just a look to understand each other. That evening, I sat on the front porch holding my favorite book, with a small music player beside me, softly playing a WC symphony. I didn't think about Mason anymore. No more pain, no more regret, only a quiet peace like the autumn sea. I had survived what once felt impossible, and most importantly, I had found myself again. One early morning in March, just as the sun rose over the distant pine trees, I woke up earlier than usual, not because of an alarm clock, not for a meeting or a packed schedule, simply because I wanted to enjoy the early moment of the day that I had missed for years. The light streamed through the glass windows, spilling across the living room of my small home on the bay in Port Townsend. The space was bathed in a soft golden hue, reflecting off the teacup in my hand, making everything feel strangely clear. I sat down in my familiar armchair, draped a light knit blanket over my legs, and gazed out at the sea, gently lapping in the distance. My heart no longer felt heavy, and most importantly, I no longer felt like the woman left behind. I had divorced and started a new life. Mason had once been a significant part of my world, but he wasn't the destination. He came into my life to teach me an expensive lesson, to wake me up and help me realize that trust should never be given to someone who doesn't know how to protect it. Love doesn't last when honesty is missing, and blind sacrifice only makes us forget our own worth. For years, I tried to be a good wife, successful at work, gentle in conversations, forgiving of flaws. But what did I get in return? A marriage filled with betrayal, a husband who no longer looked at me like a partner, but like someone planning his escape without being caught. Did it hurt? Of course, but the pain no longer drowned me. It had brought me back to shore. I had found myself more than ever before. I was no longer the woman sitting alone in the car silently crying after realizing her husband changed his password, no longer blaming herself maybe I wasn't soft enough when he avoided holding her at night, no longer clutching a coffee mug each morning just to hear his words while feeling completely numb inside. I am steady now, clear, alert, and strong enough to walk away from anyone who no longer deserves a place in my life. I remember the last time I saw Mason. It was at a financial charity event in Seattle. He stood across the room with a glass of wine, watching me from a distance. He looked different, thinner, quieter. As I walked past him, he softly called, "Harper." I turned. "Hello? You look well." He hesitated. "I am well," I nodded. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry." I smiled. "I know, but you don't have to say it because that's the past and I've chosen to live in the present." He nodded and stepped back. For the first time, I saw him as small. Every morning in my new home, I open all the windows to let the sunlight in. I keep pots of lavender along the porch and grow herbs just outside the kitchen. I started picking up what I once abandoned, an unfinished manuscript, a few pages of journaling, a letter to my 25-year-old self, naive but full of dreams. I began offering financial counseling for divorced women, not as a cold expert spouting numbers, but as someone who has lived it, who understands the fear and loss that come with starting over. They trust me, and I know why, because I don't just speak with reason, but with a heart that's been broken and carefully rebuilt. Tyler and I still keep in touch. These days, he's busy with his baby, but once in a while he sends a message. "Nora rolled over today. Her smile looks just like Claire's." I'm happy for them, not because they erased the pain, but because they learned how to face it and heal together. As for me, I'm not looking for new love. I'm not rushing into a relationship just to fill a void. I'm learning to love myself first, something I had forgotten for years. One weekend afternoon, I drove along the coastal road playing an old playlist Mason used to call Too Sentimental. The music filled the car. Dog Days Are by Florence Welch. I smiled as the wind swept through my hair, not because the past had disappeared, but because I'd gone far enough from it to look back without hurting. I used to think losing someone you love was the end, But it's not. It's just the end of something that no longer served you so you can begin something better. And if someone were to ask me now, Harper, do you regret anything? I would answer without hesitation, I don't, because some people come into our lives not to stay, but to teach us how to leave at the right time. My story isn't a tragedy, it's a journey of rebirth. From a betrayed wife, I've learned to stand back up, to heal, and to love myself again. I no longer resent the past nor seek revenge. Instead, I choose peace and a life I own. Every morning in my new home is a reminder. Sometimes loss clears the way for something better, and I'm grateful I had the courage to walk away when it mattered most. What do you think of Harper's journey? If it were you, would you forgive or walk away like she did? Share your thoughts below and don't forget to follow the channel for more meaningful stories about love, family,